Good morning, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Agun Erev Shabbos. We have some very exciting ideas to share this morning on Parshas Pinchas. I'm very excited to share with you some original ideas. The first idea is Rashi on Parak Chavav, Pasuk Lamed Vav. Rashi counts the total number of families that are counted in this week's Parsha. And Rashi says there are 57 families mentioned in this Parsha. Levi had 8 families. And there are 5 that are, so to speak, missing, less than the nations of the world. But there are a total of 57 families. So it struck me that the number 57 is certainly of significance. We've once explained at length the significance of the number 57. Just a few examples. The 3 Shemona Esreis a day, there are 57 brachos. Even the Beis Yosef writes, in one bracha of Shemona Esrei, you have say the Shemona Esrei is 19. You hear it from the Chazan is another 19. You answer Amen, that's like another 19. So each Shemona Esrei alone is 57. You know, in Mizmar LeDavid, Hashem Roi Lo Yachzar, there are 57 words. There's an idea that in the merit of the 57 blessings we make, Hashem gives us zon, food. Or oichel. Oichel is also 57. But here, who does Hashem give the food to? The 57 families of the Jewish people. Okay. Parak Chavav, Pasuk Lamed Ches. It's talking about the descendants of Binyamin. Levela mishpachas Habali, leAshbel mishpachas Ha'ashbeli, la'Achiram mishpachas Ha'achirami. So Rashi says, who's Achiram? He's Achi. He went down to Mitzrayim, and he's called by the name of Yosef, because basically, when Binyamin lost his brother Yosef, or so he thought, he named his brother Achi. So my question is, if you look in Parshas Miketz, his name was not Achiram. His name was Achi. You know, Rashi here says, who's Achiram? Binyamin's son, he's named after Yosef. Yosef was Achiv, his brother, Viram, and he was greater. He was his brother, and he was greater than him. So, question is, if you look in Parshas Miketz, that's not his name. His name is Achi. His name was Achi. So how did his name now become Ram? How did his name all of a sudden become Ram now? You know, why in Miketz was it Achi, and now it's Achiram? Maybe we could say as follows. You know, in Miketz, as far as Binyamin thought Yosef was not alive. So therefore he named his son after his brother, Achi, my brother. But then when he met Yosef, and in fact Yosef's still alive, it wouldn't have been nice to call his son my brother as if his brother is not alive, because his brother is alive. So he had to add on the word Ram to Achi, so he became Achiram. Maybe that's the reason for the name change. In other words, Achiram is Achi. It's just Achi was only appropriate so long as Binyamin thought that Yosef was not alive. But when Binyamin learned that Yosef is still alive, he added Ram. Another thing is, in the next pasuk, we encounter another son of Binyamin. His name is Shefufam. Says Rashi, who's Shefufam? Mupim. Why was he called Shefufam? Because Yosef was washed away and lost among the nations of the world. So again I have a question. Why in Miketz is he called Mupim, and now he's called Shefufam? I mean, back in the day, Yosef was also washed away. Why was his name originally Mupim, and now his name is Shefufam? So maybe we could offer the following explanation. Rashi in Miketz explains why was this son named Mupim, Binyamin named him after his brother Yosef, Mupim, because Yosef learned Mipi Aviv, from the mouth of his father. Mupim, Mipi Aviv. But I believe that Binyamin had to change his name. Because when they came down to Mitzrayim, Rashi tells us that Yosef never went into seclusion with Yaakov, so that the brothers should not suspect that Yosef revealed to him what happened. Which then meant that Yaakov did not learn with Yosef anymore. Whatever he learned with him must have been beforehand. So maybe it would not have been proper for Binyamin to keep on referring to his son as, remember Yosef used to learn with my father? That's okay if Yosef's not alive. But if Yosef's alive, and Yosef's bedafka not going to his father, maybe it was not wise to call attention to the fact that Yosef used to learn with Yaakov Avinu, because he's not doing that and he couldn't do that anymore. So Binyamin had to make a little bit of an adjustment to the name, perhaps. Okay. Next ha'ara. Perek Chav Zayin, Pasuk Gimel. Perek Chav Zayin, Pasuk Gimel. The pasuk says, Avinu meis b'midbar v'hulai haya b'soicha eda hanoyadim al alinai ba'das koirach ki v'chata imeis uvanim lai hayulai. The pasuk says, our father died. This is the Bnei Slavcha talking. And don't worry about our father. He wasn't among the congregation of Koirach. He died in his own sin, and he never had sons. So the lashon of the pasuk is that the Bnei Slavcha are telling Moshe he was not part of the guys who started up with you with the story of Kairach. But if you look in Rashi, Rashi says they told Moshe, Loi ba'adas Kairach shehitzu ala Kadosh Baruch Hu. He wasn't part of the Adas Kairach. Loi b'chet misloinanim. He wasn't part of those who complained. Elo b'chetoi levadoi meis. He was involved in his own sin. And he didn't cause anyone else to sin with him. So I have a simple question on Rashi. Why is Rashi reading in more than the pasuk says? The pasuk just says he wasn't part of the Adas Kairach. Why is Rashi adding, and he wasn't from the Misloinanim, and he didn't cause other people to sin? Where does Rashi get that from? The pasuk just says they said he wasn't from the Adas Kairach. Why is Rashi adding Loi b'chet misloinanim v'loi hechtias acherim? So whenever you read a Rashi, you always have to know that Rashi's operating principle is Ani loi basi ala l'pshuta shamikra. He's coming to address the simple reading of the pasuk. They said our father died in the desert, and he wasn't among the Eda of Kairach. He died with his own sin. Once they said that he wasn't from the Eda of Kairach, obviously he died in his own sin. He didn't die in the sin of Kairach. Why do they have to add he died in his own sin? So I would say like this. When the pasuk says, why do they have to say he died? Why does it have to say he died in his own sin? That implies not only wasn't it the sin of Kairach, it also wasn't the sin of the Messianim. The added words after they say he wasn't a member of the congregation of Kairach, if the pasuk adds he died in his own sin, that means this was not a national sin. So therefore Rashi has to add, which national sin did he not participate in? The Misloinanim. Also, the words his sin imply, and he didn't cause anybody else. So Rashi's not adding to the pasuk. Rashi's uncovering words of the pasuk that you might not have noticed. You may only have noticed he wasn't part of the Adas Kairach. But what is it adding? He died in his own sin. Which sin is that excluding? That's excluding the Misloinanim. And he didn't cause anyone else to sin. Okay. Next idea. You know, we always read Parshas Pinchas in the 3 weeks. And aside for the obvious reasons, the Bnei Yissaschar says that it talks about the distribution of Eretz Yisrael, and the Shvilei Pinchas offers an amazing insight that Pinchas is Eliyahu, and he's promised that he will herald the redemption in the end of days. So that's why it's an appropriate parsha for this time of the year. But reading the parsha, it struck me, I think there's another very important insight. Rashi emphasizes that what's the juxtaposition of the distribution of Eretz Yisrael, and the pasuk says very interestingly that among those who were counted, they did not enter, there was no man who entered Eretz Yisrael. To which Rashi says, there was no man who entered Eretz Yisrael, but the women entered. So Rashi's bothered. Okay, what's the significance that the men entered and the women did not enter? Rashi says, well, the women were mechabevois es haaretz. The women loved Eretz Yisrael. The men said, come on, let's make a leader and go back to Egypt. The women said, give us a portion. So Rashi says the reason why we juxtapose the Bnei Slavcha to here is just like the Bnei Slavcha loved Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish women loved Eretz Yisrael. And then Rashi, 2 psukim later, is bothered. It says, Ben Gilad, Ben Machir, Ben Menashe, Lemishbachais, Menashe ben Yosef. Why does it have to say Ben Menashe twice and then say Ben Yosef? Says Rashi, to teach you, Yosef was Mechabe ves haaretz, and therefore his daughters, the Bnei Slavcha, loved Eretz Yisrael. What's that doing here? Why do we read this in the beginning of the 3 weeks? So the answer is rather clear. We know the reason why we're in this mess is because of the Ched HaMeraglim. The sin of the Meraglim was they cried that they weren't interested in the land of Israel. So we like to think they cried, but we would never do such a thing. We would never cry about Eretz Yisrael. It says in the Sivas HaMishpat, if we're not in Eretz Yisrael today, that means we are guilty of the same crime of the Meraglim. That means we're still crying, God, we don't want to be in Eretz Yisrael. We'd rather be in America. And that's why we're still in Galus. That's why the Nesiva says it means, Vid bachai sivka balayla. She cried bitterly at night. That refers to the Meraglim. Vidimasa alechaya. And her tear is still on her cheek. Meaning we're still crying. Said, God, there's much better stuff in America, so let's stay here. So we're still guilty of the same crime of the Meraglim. So the tikkun for that is Parshas Pinchas. Parshas Pinchas we read about over and over again. Rashi says, Lefi shehein mechavevois es haaretz. Or Rashi says, Yosef chibei ves haaretz. By the way, Rashi says, how does Yosef love Eretz Yisrael? Because he said, V'ha'alisem es atzmoisai. Even being buried in Eretz Yisrael, even that shows a certain level of chibas haaretz. So that's the connection between Pinchas and the 3 weeks. Now, question. On the words Kain b'noi slavcha doivros, Rashi says, they spoke correctly. That's what it says in the Torah and Shamayim. From here we see their eye saw what the eye of Moshe Rabbeinu didn't see. How's that possible? They saw what's going on in Shamayim. You're telling me the Bnei Slavchad, they knew they would get a share because they saw what it said in the Sefer Torah in Shamayim? Moshe Rabbeinu didn't see that, and they saw that? We read the Parsha, they just wanted land, so they said, give me. Why? Because they wanted it, that's it. Like a kid says, give me. He doesn't understand why. No, Rashi, that's not what happened. They saw in the Sefer Torah that they're allowed to get a piece of land, so why did Moshe see? And by the way, which Sefer Torah is that? There's a different Sefer Torah in Shamayim? By the way, so that's a Yesod that the Chidah talks about, that there is a different Sefer Torah in Shamayim. On the words, V'hayamim yimei bikurei anavim, the Reb Shimon Shapoli says the letters before anavim are samach mem aleph lamed. And all the Achroinim ask, what do you mean? Well, there's a Yud in Anavim. So there's a test, so it disrupts the whole Remez. So the Bnei Yissaschar brings from the Chidah, no. we're not talking about the Sefer Torah you have in Shul. We're talking about the Sefer Torah in Shamayim. In Shamayim, there's no Yud. Down here, there's a Yud. But the Ramazim go by the Torah upstairs, not downstairs. But there's another dimension as well. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah that on Rosh Hashanah, 3 books are open. What are the 3 books? Sifran Shal Tzadikim, Sifran Shal Beinanim, Sifran Shal Risham. So Rabbi Yosef Engel says, what? There are actually books in Shamayim, and in the good book, God writes the Tzadikim, in the bad book, He writes the Risham, in the regular book, the in-between book, He writes the Beinanim. Says Rabbi Yosef, there are no books in heaven. There's one book. On your neshama is written the entire Sefer Torah. In Tzadikim, it's written. On Rishaim, it's erased. And Beinanim, it's like smudged. I believe what Rashi means that the Bnei Slavchad saw the Sefer, how'd they see it? They were in touch with what was written on their neshama. And therefore they had an intuition based on that it was, this was land they were entitled to. Trivia question. Is taiva good or is taiva bad? No? What do you say? Is taiva good or taiva bad? Are you supposed to have taiva?
Depends what it's for.
You're mechuyev to have taiva. You're obligated to have taiva. How do we know that? It's a beferish pasuk in the Chumash. Rashi says, Hashem told Moshe, Hinecha meis kasher nesaf Aaron achicha. You're going to die like Aaron. It says Rashi Mikan shenisave Moshe lemisasai shel Aaron. Doesn't say Moshe wanted it. He desired it. So you have to have desire. Thing is, you have to desire the right things. You have to desire ruchnias.
Moshe Rabbeinu witness how the Misa of Aaron worked?
Yeah, so we had in last week's Parsha, in Parshas Chukas, Rashi said that Moshe took Aaron and he donned him and then he undressed him and he said, close your mouth, close your eyes. And then at that moment, Moshe was nisave lemisasei shel Aaron. Now we asked last time, how do we know that Moshe was nisave to it? Because Hashem said you're going to die like Aaron? Maybe he wasn't nisave for it, but Hashem wanted to give it to him. So what's the proof that Moshe was nisave? How do you see anything that Moshe was nisave? But in any way, you do see one thing, that you need to desire ruchnias. A person can say, well, it would be nice if I was a Talmid Chacham. It would be nice if I had some ruchnias. Nah, you're not getting anywhere that way. You have to be nisave to ruchnias. Mi lanu gadol mi Moshe Rabbeinu shenisave lemisasei shel Aaron. Okay. Next, Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Yates. Rashi says, "V'hamada toisel v'nei Elazar kalam v'nei kol eda v'tzivisa oisa enem." Command Yehoshua. Rashi says, command him. Tell them as follows: they're a pain in the neck, they're stubborn, and tolerate them. That's Rashi. Rashi says, command Yehoshua, and let them know that the Jews are a pain in the neck. They're sarvanim, they're tarchanim. I don't understand whether that's true or not. Where does Rashi get that from? How do you see in the pasuk that Elazar was supposed to tell, that Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to tell Yehoshua, the Jews are a rough bunch? Where does it say that? You see anywhere in the pasuk where it says that Moshe was supposed to give this lovely report about the Jewish people? Rabbi said you have to read the words. It says vitzivisa, you command. Command means to put a yoke on him. So Rashi's bothered. What is the oil that Moshe is putting on the yoke of on the neck of Yehoshua? The answer is, what he needs to be mekabel is them. He has to be mekabel them because they're going to be difficult. Okay. Parak Chav Zayin Pasuk Chav Beis.
Hay there too, no?
What's the extra hey?
It's referring to the old. The Mitzvisa doesn't have to have a hey.
It could have a hey.
So it could be that the Baal Turim says.
Yeah.
Baal Turim learns Shalim Du Chamisha Chum Shatera, but you could say that it's referring to the oil.
Is oil nekeva? I don't know. Yeah, it's a good point that there's a hey. By the way, it makes up for the fact that the Gemara points this out, that by the Pninei Slavchad, the pasuk says, Nasoin titain lahem achuzas nachala b'soich achei avihem. Ahem, they became men. V'ha'avartas nachzavin lahen. So I believe Chazal say, they asserted themselves over there. So, it's lahem. But you got to make up for it, so it became B'tzivi over here. Okay, here's a good one. This is Gavaldik. Perek Chavches, Pasuk Beis. Chavches Beis. Tzavetz b'nei Yisrael v'yamart aleim es karbani lachmi lishai rechni chachi tishmor lakav li b'mayadai. Says Rashi, what's Hashem telling Moshe? Moshe, I understand. You're about to die. You're telling me what to do? You've got Hashem Lekei Aruchas. You're telling me what to do? If you're going to die, I'll tell you what to do. You tell them to bring karbanos. So here's my very simple question. That means Moshe is telling God, I'm about to die. Make a leader. Hashem says, you're telling me what? I'll tell you what they need to do. So why was it that the last thing Hashem wants Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Klal Yisrael is to bring karbanos? Isn't that interesting? That Hashem says, you don't tell me what to do, I'll tell you what to do. Tell them to bring karbanos. Hashem tells Moshe, Moshe tells Hashem, appoint a leader. Hashem says, you're telling me what? I'll let you know what they need to do. What's the pshat over here? Pshat is very pashut. People always make a mistake that they need their gadol, their rebbe to come close to Hashem. So Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, God, I'm about to go. We need another go-between. Hashem said, no. Yeah, you think you're the main glue between them and me? It's their avodah. We know the word carbon is a lashon of korva. A carbon is Mekarev Klal Yisrael Takadosh Baruch Hu. Don't make the mistake. Of course, they need a leader. They can't be Ketson Shein Lahem Roya. You're telling me what they need to come close to me. I'll let you know what they need. It's their avodah. It's not you, Moshe. It's not you, the leader. It's their avodah. Okay, this is Oyam V'Noira. You ready for this? Seir Yizim Echad L'Chatas. Hashem says, what do you bring the Seir Yizim for? I need kapara. I was Mamayit the Levana. I have a very simple question for you. It's year 40 now. It's all of a sudden now Hashem needs a kapara for being Mamayit the Levana 3,300 years ago. I understand. For the last 3,300 years, God was okay every Rosh Chodesh. All of a sudden, in year 40, when Moshe Rabbeinu is about to go, all of a sudden, we have to bring a carbon. Hashem has to bring a carbon to be mechaper on the Mir HaLevana. What's that all about? Why does all of a sudden Hashem need a kapara? The answer is because immediately before this, Moshe Rabbeinu says we need a leader. Hashem said, no problem, go to Yoshua, and he's Ish HaSharuach Bai, and put your hands on him. And Moshe gave him Mehoidai. He gave him Mehoidai. V'loi kol Hoidai. Says Rashi, Melamed shepnei Moshe kepnei Chama, pnei Yeshua kepnei Levana. Okay, great. Maybe they're equal. No, the problem is, now that Hashem was, until now that Hashem was in Ma'it Levana, it wasn't a big deal, there are no repercussions. But now that Hashem was in Ma'it Levana, then Yehoshua who's like the Levana, he ain't going to be adequate. So it's now that Yeshua was appointed and he's only Kilavana, so now Tak Hashem needs a kapara. Because the new leader, who's only Kilavana, is not going to be on the Madrega of Moshe Rabbeinu. If Hashem hadn't been Memait the Levana, it would have been like another Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. Now this is the best offering.
I think it also has to do with the fact that this is the Olas Rosh Chodesh.
Of course it's also, but they've been bringing Olas Rosh Chodesh for the last 40 years.
And it also doesn't ban for the fact that the series in Echad Lechatos by all the Karbanos. It's not only by Rosh Chodesh.
I didn't ask that question.
I know, I'm saying my terrace doesn't answer it.
Okay, there's a custom, whether you like it or not, by the Karbanos of Pesach, the Baal Koreh gives a soft landing, Ta'asu es eileh, and then everybody chimes in, Ka'eileh, and then you have all kinds of different customs of gurgling the Ka'eileh. But whether you like it or not, Jewish custom is that is like a crescendo of unison where everyone is chiming in Ka'elah, as if the mantra call of the Jewish people is Ka'elah. The rest of the laning, you ask somebody, what parsha are you in? He doesn't know if you're reading the Chumash or you're reading, Likutei Maran. All of a sudden, comes Shabbos, comes Chalamai Pesach, Ka'elah. What exactly are we so enamored with Ka'elah? You have to look at Rashi. What does the word Ka'elah mean? By the karbanos of Sukkot, you're going down, down, down. You're poiches v'hoilech. Ka'elah! But on Pesach, what you did on the first day is what you do on the second day, is what you do on the third day. Don't you dare go down. This is not poiches v'hoilech. You gotta keep your consistency. You gotta do the same thing every day. You can't wane. You can't diminish. That's the most important yesod in the Torah. Everybody knows there was a machlokes. What's the most important pasuk in Chumash? Is it Shema Yisrael? Is it Anochi Hashem Lekecha? No. Es hakeves echad tasa ba'boiker ve'es hakeves hasheni tasa ben harabayim. Consistency. Which word in the Torah proclaims that you got to be consistent in your avodas Hashem? Like this, you got to do tomorrow. Don't you dare go down. If there's one word in the Chumash that everyone has to scream out, is don't go backward. You can't go down in life. You have to be moisef v'hailech. Okay. 2 more. Did you know that this week's Parsha is the only time we read about Shmini Atzeres? Not in Re'eh.
Right.
There are many reasons for it. What occurred to me this week is, we know that the Shalosh Regalim, Pesach is Keneged Avraham, Sukkot is Keneged Yaakov, Shavuos is Keneged Yitzchak, and Shmini Atzeres is Keneged David. So you could say, the beginning of the Parsha talks about Pinchas, who's Eliyahu, and Eliyahu is going to be Mavaser the Geula before Ben David comes. So look how the Parsha is so beautifully complete. It begins with the Besura of Eliyahu, and it ends with the coming of Mashiach Ben David. Another reason why we read Parshas Pinchas in the 3 weeks, because it starts with the Besura of Eliyahu, and it concludes with the Yom of David HaMelech. And we could say one more thing. We know that by the time of the Churban, Hashem said, bye-bye, bye guys, see you later, maybe in 2,000 years, I'm out of here, I gotta leave now, here's a big hug, here's a big kiss, see you later. So Hashem is parting from the Jewish people. So therefore, in the beginning of the 3 weeks, we have to read about Shmini Atzeres. Why? The Rebbeinu Shem wants to let us know, Kasha alai Preidaschem. Even though I'm separating from you, we know Shmini Atzeres is the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, give me one more day with you. It's very difficult for me to part from you. So this is another important reason why we read Parshas Pinchas in the 3 weeks. Okay, Rabbi Isai, that's what I got for you on Pinchas, and now we have the imponderables.